Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by Jay Bowman, and today I'm looking at a different FM synth, which is Air's OPx-4, which I have installed here on my MPC Live 2. And I have to start this video with the usual disclaimer that I'm not an expert in FM synthesis by any means. I'm just an amateur who likes the sound of FM synthesis and seems to be acquiring an increasing number of FM synths. So the backstory behind why I got OPx-4 is that ideally I'd like a self-contained, all-in-one, does everything FM synth that I can take with me when I go away, that's battery powered, that has a sequencer in it. And the EssenceFM is great. It ticks a lot of boxes in some ways. It's small, it's compact, it sounds great, it's got a lot of flexibility. Unfortunately at the moment it doesn't have a built-in sequencer. It does have a kind of short note sequence that you can program in to the button on the front panel, so that when you play, when you press the button, it'll just play that sequence of notes. And it's also got a voice sequencer which you can use to sequence notes, but it hasn't got a kind of traditional sequencer. I think there are some plans in a future firmware update, hopefully, to put a sequencer into the EssenceFM, which would make it even better than it currently is, in my opinion. Also, it's not battery powered, so I guess that's the other drawback in terms of being self-contained. Whereas the MPC Live 2 obviously is battery powered, it has a built-in speaker, it's got a great sequencer, it's got pads for entering notes. So if you could have a great FM synth in the Live 2, then in theory at least that would satisfy all of my requirements for the ultimate portable FM synthesizer. Although having said that, the MPC Live 2 is actually quite big, but it's still, you can kind of fit it in a suitcase or whatever and take it with you. So that's the reason why I got the OPx-4, and since I got it I've not spent too much time playing with it, and but what I have come to realise since I acquired it is how personal the sound of FM synths is, or how different each synth sounds and how that affects different people in different ways. And I've got quite a few synths that can do 2-operator FM at least, and I've got a video elsewhere on my channel which goes through some of the different sound characteristics of those synths. I think in that test that I did, I said I preferred the sound of the EssenceFM and the way that does a 2-operator sweep over the other synths that I tested, including the OPx-4. But what I thought I'd do in this video is just go through and do a different kind of comparison of the innate sound character of each of these synths and see how they differ, and also maybe look at a bit at the user interface as well between the OPx-4 and the EssenceFM. So obviously you can see the OPx-4 screen here on camera. I've got the EssenceFM set up off camera. Unfortunately, because of the way it's set up, you can't see the EssenceFM, but I've done plenty of videos before on the EssenceFM, so hopefully you'll have an idea from that how you interact with that synth and how the user interface works. And I think what I'm going to do is set up a sound that is a very basic sound that I like the sound of on the EssenceFM, and see how the OPx-4 compares in terms of setting up the sound and then getting to a similar result, hopefully. So that's the setup for the video, and let's get started. Okay, so I have here a pretty basic 2-operator sound on the EssenceFM. So you can just hear there, we've got both operators are sine waves, and the modulator is going down from the maximum amount of modulation set at 127 on the EssenceFM into the carrier. So the carrier's envelope is an organ envelope with a full sustain, and the envelope of the modulator is that sweep shape that you can hear going on there. So that is a kind of basic FM two operator sound, and the exercise I'm going to try and do now is to replicate that, or see how close we can get to it on the OPx-4. So what I'm going to do is just turn down the EssenceFM for now, so we can turn to the OPx-4, and I'll turn that up a bit. So here, this is the screen that kind of greets you when you open up OPx-4. I've made some changes here. Right, so let's do some initial setting up. So the difference, one of the main differences between the OPx-4 and the EssenceFM is the EssenceFM is an algorithmic FM synthesizer. It has 6 operators that you can arrange in any kind of algorithm that you like. Whereas the OPx-4 is a 4-operator FM matrix synth, and the way that the operators can modulate each other is set out quite clearly here on this matrix. And theoretically, the 6-operator EssenceFM is capable of producing more complex sounds because you've got more operators to play with. But then the OPx-4, being a matrix synth, has the advantage that each operator can be both a carrier and a modulator, whereas in the EssenceFM, unless I'm missing a trick, each operator you have to choose whether it is a carrier or a modulator. So that's some of the distinctions that might become more important if you're doing more complex sound design on these synths. But what we're doing here is just a simple 2-operator sound. So you'll see here I've got operator 1 modulating itself by 4%. That is for the reason that, quite unusually for some reason on the OPx-4, the default wave shape is not a clean sine wave, it's somewhere between a saw and a sine. So in order to get to a pure sine wave, you have to modulate each operator, self-modulate each operator by 4%. So I'm going to use operators 1 and 2 to make this sound. So if I want operator 2 to be a clean sine wave, I need to self-modulate operator 2 by 4%. So the way you do that, the quickest way of doing it, if you know what percentage you need, you can just tap and enter the percentage. Unfortunately, the main knob on the MPC Live 2, which I think it's slightly off camera here, if you turn that, you get 10% increments, which is useful if you're making large changes, but personally I would have preferred a small increment, possibly even single percentage increments there for making those kind of changes. The alternative you have is that you can use your finger and swipe up and down, but you don't, it's quite fiddly to get to precise values doing it that way. I mean, one thing is the touch screen on the MPC is not as responsive as the EssenceFM, so I find I don't like interacting with it to make changes in the way that I do on the EssenceFM, where you have not only the responsive touch screen, but also for each parameter, basically you can use one of the, so that's me just using the touch screen on the EssenceFM. You see how responsive it is. You have the coloured encoders, which will link up or relate to various parameters on the screen. You have the value dial, the data entry knob. You also have increase and decrease buttons. So for every parameter, there's a number of different ways of changing it. You've got that to an extent with the MPC with the Q-Link buttons, but here on this page, for example, where I think it would be useful for the Q-Links potentially to go through the rows or the columns of the matrix to allow you to make changes using the Q-Link knobs. For some reason it's not set up that way, so these are the options of the things you can change with the Q-Link knobs. Again, it's not the end of the world, it's just possibly not as well thought through a UI as other synths now. So here we've got a clean sine wave, so what can we hear at the moment? We can hear both operator 1 and operator 2, or can we? Let's have a look. No, because I'm looking at the submix page here, and you can see that the only operator that's actually going out, the main outs, is the operator 1. So that means all the other operators at this stage are just being used as modulators, not as carriers. So if I want to modulate operator 1 by operator 2, here's where I do it, on this row here. Okay, so here we have 100%, so that's the maximum modulation that we can get on the OPx-4. Let's compare that to the EssenceFM. So that is the EssenceFM's maximum modulation compared to the OPx-4 with the default setting. You can probably hear that you're getting a lot more modulation with the EssenceFM. So superficially at least, on a basic level, the OPx-4 is not giving you the same kind of flexibility and maximum potential modulation that the EssenceFM is. Now here on the OPx-4 you've got these other options in the operator page. So for example, you can change the pulse width of the operators. So that is changing operator 1, which is the carrier. And you can hear that is introducing some more kind of gnarly effects. I wouldn't say it's necessarily traditional. It doesn't sound like traditional FM modulation, but it does at least give you some additional variety. Let's do it with the modulator and see what difference that makes. Okay, again, I'll raise the volume of the EssenceFM. It's an interesting sound. It just doesn't sound like traditional FM to me. So you've got this additional. So I turned down the EssenceFM. So now you've got this additional format. So that's me turning up the format modulation on operator 1, which is the changing the format setting on the carrier. Let's change it. And in theory, I suppose you can modulate those settings using the LFO, the envelopes, etc. So the setting FM filtering doesn't seem to have much effect on the carrier or on the modulator. I'm not sure what that's doing. FM shaping, again, not having much effect on the modulator or the carrier. Okay. So let's change the envelope a bit so that they match more closely. So the default envelope shape you get on the EssenceFM is an organ envelope, which is like this. So you've got almost no attack, full sustain, and a little bit of release. And that is the default envelope shape for all of the operators in the EssenceFM. And obviously you can change that as you like, but I find it quite helpful. It just means that you will hear each operator going at its maximum volume by default. Whereas in the OPx-4, operator 1 has an organ envelope and the others have this kind of plucky envelope at various different shapes. Now, like with the EssenceFM, you can manipulate the envelopes with your fingers. It's not quite as fluid as the EssenceFM, I would say, but you can get to a similar effect. So I want to, looking at the EssenceFM, I can see that the decay time is 5.7 seconds. So in theory, I should be able to match that pretty closely by going to 5.7 seconds on. Now, one way in which the OPx-4 has an advantage over the EssenceFM is in the EssenceFM you have a choice between linear or exponential envelopes. In the OPx-4, and that's a universal setting for each envelope, for each operator's envelope. So if you select linear, then all of the segments of the envelope for a particular operator will be linear. If you select exponential, they'll all be exponential. In the case of the OPx-4, each segment can have its own curve. So I can hopefully get it pretty close to the envelope on the EssenceFM. Now what I'm going to have to do is change the amount of modulation on the EssenceFM, so because the OPx-4 just can't get close to that, can't get close to the EssenceFM. So I've gone down from 127 on the EssenceFM to 90, and that seems pretty similar. Yeah, so still not quite right. Okay. I can't match it completely, but that's pretty close, I'd say. Maybe there's still a bit too much modulation in the EssenceFM. Yeah, so we've gone down to 80. Okay. So I think we can tell there that the OPx-4 can't really compare with the EssenceFM in terms of a two-operator setup for the amount of modulation you get. I'm going to turn down the EssenceFM. So it's not a bad sound actually. And as we previously explored, you can make it a bit more gnarly sounding. wonder whether you could get a more extreme setting as well by increasing the self-modulation. Yeah. So that was increasing the self-modulation of the carrier. Let's try it with the modulator. Still not getting you that kind of modulation you hear on the EssenceFM there. I suppose there could be some people who would prefer the sound of the OPx-4. To me, it doesn't sound as clear as the EssenceFM, and it sounds a bit muddy. Even when you limit the EssenceFM to the same maximum amount of modulation as the OPx-4 as we have here. So that's the EssenceFM limited to the amount of modulation you can get on the OPx-4, and even then I think personally I prefer the kind of clearer sound of the EssenceFM, whereas this sound of the OPx-4 might have some fans because some interesting characteristics there. It's like a kind of a noise it's the sort of sound you get from disabling waveform interpolation on the EssenceFM. So I'll do that and see how the sounds compare then. So I'll turn up the EssenceFM. Well, it's more extreme on the EssenceFM. You can hear that buzz. So that's the buzziness of disabling waveform interpolation on the EssenceFM. Whereas the OPx-4, it's kind of a distortion. It sounds like distortion. So maybe if I turn off the disable waveform interpolation option on the EssenceFM and see how they compare when I use a bit reduced sine wave on the EssenceFM. See if you can get that kind of distorted sound on the EssenceFM. That's a bit closer, but it's still not quite the same, is it? Again, you can just hear that the OPx-4 sound is duller. How would you get more highs into it if that's what you wanted? You could always filter the EssenceFM sound down, so let's try and do that to see if we can get closer to the OPx-4 sound on the EssenceFM. So what I'll do is turn up the EssenceFM. So the EssenceFM has a multi-mode filter EssenceFM filter. It's a 6 dB per octave filter, quite unusual. But I suppose this is exactly what it's made for, just taking off some of the highs. So that's the OPx-4 sound. Whereas even with the low pass filter, the EssenceFM is just still brighter. Let's see if I can reduce the cutoff even further. Just peaking there on the OPx-4. Yeah, so you're not going to get them to sound the same. And normally I'd say it's easier to get the brighter synth to sound darker by using a filter than it is to make the duller synth sound brighter. But even when you make the EssenceFM cut the highs using the filter, it still has a kind of buzziness about it that the OPx-4 doesn't have. So that's the OPx-4. Using the bit reduced sine wave. I think one advantage I may have noticed with the OPx-4 over the EssenceFM, I think there you can hear what sounds like aliasing to me on the EssenceFM. So if I just turn up the sustain on the envelope there, you can hear that. So I've gone up a few octaves, so you can hear that aliasing, which I assume that's what it is, coming in with the modulator. Now if I turn up the OPx-4, playing at the same octave, see here, there is a bit of aliasing there, but it's much cleaner at an equivalent pitch than the EssenceFM, I think. Yeah, and it's quite noticeable there. Again, I guess that could be a sound that some people would like, but it's worth taking into account. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. What have we learned? We've learned that different synths sound different. Excellent. I suppose the question is, which do you prefer? I think at the moment I prefer the EssenceFM sound, and I find it more flexible, have more variety to be used in the kind of music I like to make, with the sounds I like to make. But that could change in the future. I'm much more familiar with the EssenceFM than I am with the OPx-4, and as I experiment more with the OPx-4, I might get to more familiar with it and become better at programming it, and it might be something that I take to. But I just find it interesting to explore the kind of innate differences between two synths which are superficially quite similar in that they're both digital FM synths, but even when you break it down to the most basic FM patch, there's quite noticeable differences there between the two of them. So that's all for me today. Hopefully some people have found this video interesting or useful. Again, I wouldn't claim, obviously, that this is a full review of the OPx-4 at all. It's just an exploration and a bit of a comparison against the EssenceFM. I'm going to continue dabbling in the OPx-4 from time to time. I have a new FM synth arriving in the post, hopefully within the next couple of days. So the FM synth collection is increasing, and maybe I'll do some videos with that new mystery synth once it arrives. But for now, I'll say thank you for watching and goodbye, and catch you on the next video.